Hi, and welcome to the Watershed Stewards Academy webinar about the Anne Arundel County Watershed Protection and Restoration Program's Watershed Mapping Application. We're going to review the quick help guide together. My name is Zoe Clark-West, and I'm the Restoration Coordinator at the Watershed Stewards Academy. You will have a hard copy that kind of walks you through the quick help guide, and this webinar is meant to just show you some of the steps to get you through that guide. I just want to suggest that the best way to get to know this application is to play around in it. You can't hurt it. It's run off of the city servers. There's nothing you can do that's going to harm it, so you can play around and enjoy it, turn it on and off again, and just take your time to get to know it. So the way to get to this is to go to either have the URL, which is on the quick help guide, but you could also just go to the county site. Then you can click on departments, go to the Department of Public Works, then you look for the Watershed Protection and Restoration Program link, then you go there and you look for their resources tab, and on their list of resources will be the Watershed Mapping Application. Once you get to the application, it comes up with a page that kind of fades into what you're seeing on your screen right now. Those of you who are familiar with GIS will find this familiar. GIS has several layers, and you will notice that the layers are listed on our left-hand side. You will also see that the map is focused in on Anne Arundel County. Everything outside of Anne Arundel County is pretty much a blank. So there is no data for things that are outside of Anne Arundel County, and you will also notice that the city of Annapolis has some information, but it is also grayed out, and the information that the county has is for the county, of course. So let's talk about the things that are useful to us as Master Watershed Stewards, and I am going to be following the quick help guide pretty closely, so you can you can use that to follow along. And you can certainly use that to help yourself as you are doing this on your own. The things that you really start with when you're looking at this for the first time are the I want to piece. When you click on that, you can kind of see certain things that you're looking for. Most of us are going to be looking for an address because we're probably working on a particular site, and this is one of the first things that it took me a little bit to get used to. Even though the format examples do not have caps in use, I would recommend using all caps when you're typing in, because the program is actually using all caps when it's searching. And I would recommend typing in slowly, because if you do, it will start to look for things. Anytime you type in something slowly, it starts to come up with suggestions. And if you give it a chance to, you are likely to find what you're looking for more quickly. So that's what I recommend doing when you're typing in an address. If you type in the wrong address, or even if one letter's off, it will not find it for you. It does not have that kind of search capacity. So let's talk just a little bit about the tools that are at the top. When you're with the map tab, you have something called full extent. If you click it, it just basically zooms out to the county. If you go to previous extent, it always takes you back to where you were. Since I wasn't anywhere really interesting, it didn't go anywhere very interesting, but we scroll in and then I'm like, wait a minute, where was I? Then you do previous extent and it takes you back to the last place that you were. That can be useful if you end up somewhere strange and you don't know how you got there, then just click previous extent and it takes you back. Your layer list, if ever you wonder where your layers went, you ended up somewhere on your map and you're like, wait a minute, I don't know where my layers went, they just disappeared, then it's always helpful to just come up here and click on that layer list and you'll get your layers back over here. Now, uploading data, some of you will do, some of you won't. Most of you know how to upload data from the computer. It's the usual sort of interface. And linked maps is exactly what you think it would be. It takes you to Bing on my computer because I'm Microsoft, and you can get to other maps. And it's just useful if you want to say, well, this, the GIS for Anne Arundel County is suggesting that we have, a tree in front of the yard here or something like that. But now I'm going to go look at the Bing because maybe the Bing is more updated and I want to see that. And you're saying, wait a minute, there's no trees on there. Well, if you zoom in, you actually can get to a point where you can see some trees. Then if I were to go to that same property address in Bing, I might be able to see more recent aerial data and know, oh, there actually is or isn't a tree in that particular location. So that is why that is useful for some folks. So let's talk a little bit about what we see also on the Tools tab. Again, when we're thinking about moving data around, print just gives you some options for how you want to share that data. What you see, this red highlighted area, is the actual area that will be printed. Your output format, your resolution are pretty straightforward. Your map scale, some of you will care about that. Some of you it will not matter. If you want to have more information about that, please feel free to talk to me. And you can write a title and notes. You can also do print screen and just grab your whole screen and grab it and put it in your Word document or other document that you're working in. There's also the option for exporting. You can just choose your preferred format. Most of us use a JPEG, PNG, BMPs are also optional. That's pretty straightforward. Things that I do use more frequently are the measuring tools. If you come up here and you click on your options, you'll see that you can do an interesting line. You can do a freehand line. You can do a freehand shape. Then you also have these shapes that are kind of more created for you. The one that I probably use most often are the line and the polygon. And they do exactly what they say they're going to do. They measure it for you. So if you've got your line, you click and you give it a minute because it takes it a minute to grab. And then you pull down to where you want to measure to, and you click again. And then up pops your measurement. It is in feet. And then you hit the escape button and it goes away. If you want to turn off that particular tool, you have to click it again. That's something that I often forget to do, and then suddenly I've got lines all over. The measurement tool that I tend to use most often is the polygon, because I may want to measure the whole of this particular structure, and you'll notice that it's got a little bit of an overhang over here, so it's trickier than just as being a square. So I come here and I can go out and around, and I can do this overhang and come back and capture the rest of the roof. And now suddenly, if I double click, I've got the area of that whole structure. And of course, it gives me the perimeter too when I want to get out of it. In this case, I closed the things. I closed the shape, and so that shape's going to stay on there. And I can get out of there and then come up here and click off of the measuring tool. You have your typical draw features that if you've used GIS, you're familiar with these. And you can also do points. You can edit anything that you've drawn, and you can export your drawings. What's useful for some folks when they're doing a project is they want to get their coordinates. This is especially useful if you're going to report your work that you've done, or say you wanted to tell someone that where the coordinates were for the beginning of Bell Branch. You could choose plot coordinates, and then you come and hover over Bell Branch or the beginning of it on the map. And if you click there, it's going to give you this nice little map. Well, here's the coordinates right there. And then you can move on to another one. And you see that it's got the coordinates there. And of course, you could create a map where several coordinates were. And you could say, oh, I've done a project at these coordinates. I've done a project at these coordinates. I've done a project at these coordinates. Or something like that might be useful for something that you would do as a steward. So let's close out of those tools. And since I don't want to plot coordinates anymore, I'm going to click off of that tool. So now that we've looked at the tools, let's look at the layers a little bit and just see how they're structured. We have here some groupings and some nestings of layers. And you'll notice that you can click on and off the plus sign to see those layers. And they are grouped in ways that make a fair bit of sense. So if you click on the terrain data, you will see that you have topography. And in order to actually get to the topography, you have to turn it on, and then you can get to those layers. Now, this is where we start to see why GIS can sometimes be tricky. It's because the data is significant, and it takes a little while for the data to load. So now I've turned on the terrain data, and I'm waiting for the topography to load. And it's interesting because the computer's not telling me that it's going to give it to me, and yet here I am waiting. So I'm going to turn that off because we're not going to spend our time in this webinar waiting for the terrain data to come on and off. But just be aware that terrain data comes on for the whole county, not just for the area that you're looking at. And sometimes, if lots of people are using the server to do the terrain data or to do GIS right now, it might take a little longer. It could also be impacted by your internet services speed at that particular moment in time. So just be aware of that. So you'll notice as we go down through here, through the layers, that there are many that are grouped, and it's good to just hit that plus bar, see what the options are, and see whether or not they are going to be useful to you, whether or not you want to see them. It's fun just to turn them on. Of course, we are interested in watersheds. So here they are. If we scroll in and out, we can see the names. So here's part of the Little Patuxent. Here's part of South River. If we scroll further out, we'll start to see the whole shapes of them. And what I have to remind myself of when I'm looking at watersheds is that those lines between the watersheds are high points, right? Those are along ridges. So that's kind of interesting to think about, where the ridges are within the county. So let's move on. The next thing, take your time when you're looking at layers to go in all the way for each layer, and turn on the information, look at the information that's available. You can see down here when it's loading, it tells you that it's loading, and sometimes you'll see that for a little while. Give yourself, one of the things you need to give yourself when you're doing GIS data is give yourself some time, because every time you then zoom in and zoom out, it has to reload. So that's just something to think about. One thing that is helpful is that once you've gotten your information from a particular layer, you may choose to turn it off so that you don't have to be loading that data anymore while you're looking at pieces of other information. So that's something to think about for how you want to manage the data as you're zooming in and zooming out. So something else you can look at are the different pieces of information that's available, what it is. I'll let you kind of explore that on your own. But things that we use, of course, are the master watershed stewards. The other things we use are parcels. So let's just click that on for fun and see what that looks like. It looks like it might not be loading for us. Parcels are, of course, property lines. Something to remember about GIS as well is that it's not always exactly what is happening in the field or in the real world. So when you see those parcel lines, those property lines come on, you need to keep in mind that if the line is kind of going a little bit over the sidewalk or a little bit over the house, that's okay. So here they are. It may not be a perfect representation of how it really is, but it's going to give you a good sense of what you're looking at in terms of property. Of course, structure addresses are important. The drain lines right here, they show the flow path of water within a area. That could be useful for you if you're working within a neighborhood and you want to understand what's happening within a smaller area of watersheds. finally, we have, as we come down here, we have the stream assessment and modeling, and that has most of the non-tidal streams assessed for their environmental issues, the deficiencies that they have. You've got to zoom in close to see that information, and you've got to check all of the boxes. You've got to check the outer box and then the nested boxes to get the information that you might be looking for. So this is really stuff that you would be looking for if you were dealing specifically with streams. You might not be looking at this if you were working on a specific property. Septic system is, of course, something you will want to check for any property that you go on. Some people know for sure their septic situation, but it's always useful just to double check. And of course, the terrain data is something that we use frequently. Note, I'm going to turn off the septic systems so I can turn on the terrain data. The topography is, of course, something we think about a lot when we're thinking about the flow of water. Where's the water going? And the topography on a particular property can help us understand what might be happening with the water on that site. Now, when we're doing desktop analysis, GIS can really help us begin to understand that property. But again, we always need to go to the site and verify that what we've seen in our desktop analysis is reflective of what we're seeing on the actual site. And we're going to wait for a minute and see if our topo is going to come on here. It looks like the topography is struggling today. Let's see if it'll do it. Yep, sometimes the topo does not want to come on. That could be an issue with the city servers today. It could be an issue with my connection. Utilities, of course, are important. It's nice to know, are there outfalls near a property, and where the storm drains and storm manholes are, where the inlets are. Of course, the drain pipes, culverts, sewer lines, and water lines are all really helpful to understanding what's going on from a stormwater situation and what utilities might be being impacted. And right now we're having the situation where we may not be able to see them all, but let's see if it will load it for us. And I'm on an Ethernet cable right now, but often I'm on Wi-Fi when I do this. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not. You're getting the real thing here. So let's turn off utilities. Now, here's another thing that we use in particular for our residential site assessments, and we'll cover residential site assessments more carefully together. But urban features has information about impervious surfaces on each parcel. And that's important because we want to know what percentage of a property is impervious versus what percentage of the parcel is pervious. And we can find that information out here on the WPRP mapping application. You could, of course, go to the site and measure everything, but it's actually very nice that we have that data here. So the impervious surfaces that were recorded in 2014 are actually quite significant. They have the roofs, they have the driveways, they have the sidewalks, they have a lot of decking, and of course the swimming pools, and that is actually really helpful when you're looking at a parcel and you want to see what of the property is impervious. So what it seems to be telling me right now is that that it's getting hung up on the base map data. So I'm going to turn off the base map and just see if just having the ortho data will work for me. And that didn't seem to help right now. Turn off that, see if that helps. Sometimes if you've got multiple data layers on, it helps to turn off a couple of them and see if it'll give you more. And every time you scroll in and out, it has to reload, which is good if you want to remind it what it's doing. But sometimes if it's taking its time to load, then that can be a problem. But look here, we've reminded it what it's doing. So here comes the impervious surfaces. You'll see that it gets all the parking lots and it gets the roads. So that is actually really helpful data. So let's zoom in and see one of these parcels a little more close up. So we see the roofs, we see the sidewalks, we see the roads, and this parcel here has a driveway. So that's been captured. Here's another sidewalk all along here. So this is how we can begin to get the parcel data. Now I'm just going to show you real quickly, like, oh, well, okay, that's great that's the roof, but how do I know how much that is? So let's use one of our tools from the Maps tab. If I grab the Identify tool and I say I want to know how large this roof is, so I'm going to click on that feature, and it says, oh, look, she's clicking on something, and I'm giving you these options. It's saying that I've clicked on a parcel and then I've clicked on an impervious surface. Well, I want to look at an impervious surface, so I'm going to click here. And now it's telling me, oh, this was the one you selected, and that is correct. That is what I was clicking on. So if you see this little arrow here, it's telling me that I have more information. So if I click on that, then I can scroll down here. It's telling me it's a building. Well, we kind of figured that, who created it. And then here it tells me how large that is by acres. I'm going to tell you a little trick. Acres are great for certain things, and you're going to use acres, but we are often using feet. And this shape ST area, it happens to be in feet. So you might want to grab both of those pieces, but the feet is right down here in shape ST area. So that's really useful. That's going to be part of what we use when we're doing a residential site assessment, and we want to find the percentage of impervious for a particular parcel. So I would record that. And then what I might want to do now is I might want to go find the impervious area of this driveway. So I'm going to go out of this particular one. I'm going to close it and then go back. And then I'm going to click on the Identify tool again. I'm going to say I want to find out about this driveway. So I click here. It's grabbed another impervious surface. Let's make sure it's grabbed the right one. It has. I want to find out about it. So I'm going to go in, and here's the shape ST area here. So this one's 892 square feet. That sounds good. I record that, close out of it, go back. And look, this little guy has a shed or something. So let's find out about that one. Oh, let's close out of this altogether. Get back to my list. Find out. Oh, I clicked him off. Click on that one. He's grabbing it. See if it grabbed the right one. He did. Scroll down. About 90 square feet. So now I could add all of those numbers together. And then what would I do? Well, we have an example of how you would find it on the overview that we've given you, but we would need to know the parcel area. So we'd close out of this. And remember when I was looking at this and I was clicking on it, it was telling me, well, I've got the parcels turned on. So I could look at the parcels. Oh, look, it's telling me I have all the parcels turned on. Now that is something I have never seen before. So something definitely went wrong there. So let's see if we can figure out what happened with the parcels. Come up here. Well, see, it's telling me parcels are turned on. So let's turn this off and give it a break for a minute. And turn it back on. Turn on the parcels. That's interesting because there's not a parcel thing coming on around that. Oh, look what's happened here. In this particular instance, it's saying that this whole area is one parcel. So that would make it very difficult if this homeowner wanted to know what he could do for his particular property. So this is an instance where something's different about this space. It could be that all of this property is owned by one person, but say that this particular resident wanted to do something on their particular area, I would have to actually use my measure tool and choose my polygon, and I would have to make a best guess about their area, about their parcel. And see, okay, look, they're looking at almost 8,000 square feet for their parcel, and we already had added up about how much their impervious surface was, and then we would want to do the calculation to figure out what their impervious surface percentage was for their parcel, and that would start to give us some numbers that we could talk to them about what their options might be for treating some of that runoff that's coming off of that impervious surface. So we just found an example by luck of a situation where the parcel information might not be available to us on a resident by resident level. So we have this great measurement tool that could help us. So I think we're closing in on the end of what we can really cover with you, that you can then spend some time going over things on your own. In particular, I recommend looking over here at the soils. Scroll down a little bit. You come to the soils section, you'll see that the soils is kind of an interesting layer. It's just these big polygons. And if you use your information tool like we did for the parcels, and you click on these polygons, you'll learn some really interesting things about different soils. And if you close in, you can also zoom in, you can also see that on any given parcel, there might be many different types of soils. So that's something to think about. Anne Arundel soils are actually quite complex due to the way they were formed geologically. And so you always want to think about your soils and whether or not they are appropriate for the types of practices that we do and what is best suited for them. So this is a great place to start, looking at the soils here. So there are several other things you can look at on the list on our quick overview that we gave you. I hope you will spend some time going through this application, looking at the layers, clicking on and off of them, and then using them to help you with your assessments moving forward. And you're always welcome to come to office hours in advance of class and spend time with me on GIS.